Garden Basics with Farmer Fred is brought to you by Smart Pots, the original lightweight, long-lasting fabric plant container. It's made in the USA. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information and a special discount. That's smartpots.com/Fred. Welcome to the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast. If you're just a beginning gardener or you want good gardening information, well, you've come to the right spot. Today, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower, and myself tackle your garden questions. And they're all about bugs, including what are probably the big three of bugs that vex gardeners the most: aphids, wasps, gnats, and for some people, especially if they're allergic to them, bees. And that one serves as an introduction to one of the more vexing questions we received. Are there any plants to repel bees? It's all in today's episode 272, Questions and Answers About Bugs. We're podcasting from Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon Jungle in Suburban Purgatory. It's the Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast, brought to you today by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. Let's go. Obviously, the answer to the question, what is your most despised garden pest? That's going to vary. It's going to vary by location, the time of the year, and who you're asking. After all, the rose gardener have their own sworn enemies, as do vegetable growers. But in general, everyone at one point or another during the course of the growing year will encounter aphids. Lots and lots of aphids. And this year is no exception. Multiple questions have come in lately asking about aphid control techniques. So we begin our little Q&A session talking about the garden pest that is born pregnant and can give birth to 5, 6, or more new pests every day of its adult life. So what's the deal with all these aphids? The birds are singing, the flowers are flowering, and the aphids are aphiding. Oh, the aphids. What are we going to do? Debbie Flower is here, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, and no matter what we do to aphids, they come back.
They sure do.
Year after year after year. What are they doing? Should we even get rid of them?
Well, that's a good question. I would, in some cases, I don't bother, and in other cases, I go after them. There are many different kinds of aphids. There are many different colors of aphids, different sizes of aphids. And so finding a good reference that shows you pictures of them might be helpful. They are rather specific in terms of, like, the yellow ones are on the Asclepia, which is butterfly weed. And my apricot has some light green ones on the leaves that are very protected, the understory leaves. So different ones. Some look waxy, some are white, some are black. There's all kinds of aphids.
There are dead aphids, too, on there, too, which look like black specks.
Oh, and there are cast skins.
Yes.
Aphids are born pregnant, and so they give birth, live birth, to these babies. And then as the babies get bigger, they much like a snake does, cast off their skin. They break open their skin and they come out and they have a new skin on underneath. And they leave little white specks they're called cast, meaning thrown away, skins among their population on the plant.
Yeah, something like they'll molt 4 times before they're an adult.
Yes.
Here's one wonderful fact from the University of California, in that in our mild climate, aphids can reproduce asexually throughout most or all of the year, with adult females giving birth to live offspring as many as 12 per day without mating. 12 babies a day.
Yeah.
Wow. No wonder they have to suck all those plants.
Right. So they're a sucking insect. They put their mouth parts into the plant, and the pressure in the plumbing of the plant pushes the sap into them. They use that for food. It doesn't all get used because the pressure is so great. It comes out faster than they can consume it. And so some comes out the other end. They actually have a special plumbing arrangement inside the aphid's body where some of it just totally bypasses the digestive system, comes out the back, and that creates those sticky spots all over the place called honeydew.
And if you're looking for some honeydew, look for any plant with new growth, because probably on the new growth this time of year, you're going to see aphids. And if you touch that portion of the plant, your fingers will feel sticky.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't see it, but you see a whole lot of like wasps flying around a portion of the plant, they may be eating the honeydew. They like it for food. So that's another way to potentially find the honeydew.
What's amazing, too, speaking of wasps, there are parasitic wasps that are small and they don't sting humans, and you probably have a hard time seeing them, but they will lay their eggs inside the aphid.
Yes, they do. And then the aphid body becomes tan and round. They're generally a sort of long, bulging in the middle, tapering at either end insect with 6 legs, but they will become round and tan, and that's when the aphid has died, but the wasp is developing inside. And then the wasp will cut a perfect round circle in that tan body and escape.
Yeah.
So that's one reason not to kill the aphids. If it's not a problem, the problem being that it distorts the leaf shapes, and it produces this honeydew, which can be a problem on the sidewalk. It can be a problem on other parts of the plant where it turns black and prevents light from getting to those parts of the plants. So if you don't have the distortion or the honeydew problem or other problems that aphids may cause, then just let them do their thing and let these what we call beneficial insects come in and consume the aphids. And so that there are quite a number of them.
The smarty pants among you may be saying, now, wait a minute, you said live offspring, 12 a day. Well, how do they make it through the winter? Well, they've got that covered, because come that time of year when it starts getting cold, there are aphids that will lay eggs that can overwinter. Pretty good, huh? And they will usually lay those eggs in fall or winter and put it on foliage on deciduous plants. And sometimes they lay these eggs on an alternative host, usually a perennial plant, for winter survival.
Sometimes they'll go under bark on trees. I've only sprayed my apricot 1 year for I've lived in this house 11 years, only sprayed it 1 year during the dormant season. And it was because the previous summer I had so many aphids. It was just, I couldn't touch the plant. I couldn't get near it. I couldn't get under it. And so I waited for all the leaves to fall off. You know, you do it at the correct time of year. And I did the dormant spray of a horticultural refined oil, and did the trunk as well and all the bark as much as possible. And I've never had a big problem after that.
You smothered the eggs.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, with oil, which is an organically acceptable spray to use.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. In case those of you who are worried.
Look for that OMRI certification on the label.
Yeah, it's not like you were using some non-selective insecticide.
No, and that's what you don't want to do. When I worked at Cooperative Extension, I was the advisor to the nursery industry, and I got a call from a local retail nursery, and they had a spider mite problem, huge spider mite problem, which is a bigger, worse, harder to control problem than aphids. Well, it turned out they'd had aphid problem, so they went out with a broad spectrum insecticide and sprayed everything. And yeah, they got rid of the aphids, but they also got rid of the spider mite predators. And so the spider mites moved in, and there was nobody around to control them.
Yes, spider mites are not controlled by an insecticide. They're controlled by a miticide.
Yes. So if you want to control your aphids, reduce the nitrogen you're using on the plants if possible, because you don't want lots of new growth. You want some, but you don't want plants with lots and lots of new leaves. That just is an aphid buffet, and they'll move in and all 12 of the new babies will live, and they'll all have 12 new babies tomorrow. So the population will explode. So lessen the amount of nitrogen fertilizer. That's the first number on a fertilizer bag is nitrogen. Causes green growth, which we want, but not in excess. Don't use a pesticide. Just spray water. A hard spray of water on the plant will knock them off, squash them. It'll reduce the population. It also gets rid of the honeydew, which can be an attractant for things like wasps. And thin the plant so that the beneficial insects can get into the aphids. I was actually doing that yesterday on my apricot, which had some layered growth. So meaning branches over branches And so the lower branches weren't getting a lot of airflow. They weren't getting a lot of sun, and it was difficult for a beneficial insect to get in there. So I was judiciously taking out certain branches so that it was opened up, and that aphid population, and it does have one this year, would be controlled naturally.
This is why it is so important to know your garden good guys, know the beneficial insects, not only what the adult looks like, but what the larval stage of the beneficial insects look like, because they're the ones that do a lot of the aphid munching. Lady beetles, for example, you know what a full-grown ladybug looks like. Do you know what a teenage ladybug looks like? It looks like an alligator with a San Francisco Giants warm-up jacket. Lacewings, too. I mean, there's an odd one. I mean, you know what lacewings are because you'll see them stuck to the screen door on a warm evening.
When the light's on. Yeah.
But it looks like a kind of a iridescent yellow caterpillar in the larval stage.
Yes.
Just very amazing. So you might think of it as a bad guy. It's not. You've got to know what these...
Same with syrphid fly larvae. You can see their body parts right through their skin when they're in the larval stage, and they look like a caterpillar. So yeah, getting to know these is very important. There is a poster available to familiarize yourself with those. Getting to know those is crucial.
What was the name of that poster?
Run out to the garage.
I'm going to run out to the garage and look. It's called the poster that we'll have a link to that you can download and hang it over the freezer in your garage like I do. It's called Meet the Beneficials from the University of California. So we'll have a link to Meet the Beneficials so you can see what the garden good guys look like, because you do want to encourage that. But we should point out one more thing about aphid control. You're probably going to see ants moving up and down the planet.
Right. So they want that honeydew too.
Yeah. So we got to control the ants too.
We do. Yeah. Absolutely. And so baiting for those ants is an important step in the control of the aphids.
We'll have a link to previous episodes that talk about ant control, because there's a lot of tactics you can take. But aphids, they're going to be with us from here on out. So just keep a garden hose handy, for one thing, and consider building the Good Bug Hotel. Put in a lot of attractive plants for beneficial insects. And we'll have a link to that as well in today's show notes.
And although that poster is from the University of California, it applies all over the country.
Bugs are bugs.
Yes.
All right. Debbie, thanks for the word on aphids.
You're welcome, Fred.
You've heard me talk about the benefits of Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric containers. Smart Pots are sold around the world. They're proudly made 100% right here in the USA. Smart Pots is the oldest and still the best of all the fabric plant containers that you might find. Many of these imitators are selling cheaply made fabric pots that fall apart quickly, but not Smart Pots. There are satisfied Smart Pot owners who have been using the same Smart Pots for over a decade, actually approaching 20 years. When you choose Smart Pot fabric containers, you know you'll be having a superior growing experience with the best product on the market. And your plants will appreciate Smart Pots too. Because of the 1 million microscopic holes in Smart Pots, your soil will have better drainage and the roots will be healthier. Those roots won't be going round and round on the outside of the soil ball like you see in so many plastic pots. The air pruning qualities of Smart Pots creates more branching of the roots, and that'll fill more of the usable soil in the Smart Pot. Visit smartpots.com/Fred for more information about the complete line of Smart Pots lightweight, colorful fabric containers. And don't forget that /Fred part, because on that page are details of discounts when you buy Smart Pots at Amazon. Maybe you want to see them before you buy? Not a problem. Smart Pots are available at independent garden centers as well as select Ace and True Value hardware stores nationwide. To find a store near you or to buy online, visit smartpots.com/Fred. Smart Pots, the original award-winning fabric planter. Go to smartpots.com/Fred for more information and that special Farmer Fred discount. Go to smartpots.com/Fred. It's coming Saturday, August 5th. It's Harvest Day at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center. It's put on by the UC Master Gardeners of Sacramento County. And Harvest Day features speakers, education tables, garden vendors, food trucks, and your chance to explore the beautiful 1-acre garden that is designed for you, the backyard gardener, to take home ideas that you can use in your own yard. The Fair Oaks Horticulture Center was built and is maintained by Sacramento County Master Gardeners. It features areas dedicated to growing berries, herbs, fruit trees, vegetables, a vineyard, native plants, water-efficient plants, and a lot more. Plus, there are sections dedicated to composting, and that includes worm composting. On Harvest Day, each area is staffed by master gardeners who are eager to answer your garden questions. At the dozens of educational tables, you're going to get information from professional nursery people, irrigation specialists, the Audubon Society, soil experts, the master food preservers, local garden clubs, water experts, honeybee, and native bee specialists. Vendors will include Northern California nurseries, exotic plants, cactus and succulents, mushroom growing kits, and more. And the speakers, they're going to be talking about landscape trees, attracting pollinators, and, oh yeah, myself and America's favorite retired college horticulture professor, Debbie Flower, will be talking at 8:30 that morning about tips for saving time, money, and water in the garden. Someone once said it's the best garden event in Northern California. Oh, wait, I said that. But you know, it's true. And best of all, it's free. Harvest Day at the Fair Oaks Horticulture Center. It's Saturday, August 5th, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's in Fair Oaks Park in Sacramento County. Check today's show notes for a link with more details and maps of Harvest Day. Hope to see you there. We like to answer your garden questions here on the Garden Basics podcast. Joining me in the studio today here at Barking Dog Studios, watching the recently trimmed Abutilons growing back to their full size. It's Debbie Flower, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor. The regrowth is always amazing in the garden and how things look fresh and green, but it also brings out the latest crop of pests as well.
Yes, it does.
So I was at the eye doctor the other day. They did some touch-up cataract surgery.
Uh-huh.
You ever had cataract surgery twice?
No, my husband just had it once for each eye. So,
well, apparently they needed to do some touch-up surgery. And for like 2 or 3 days afterwards, I was seeing what I thought were flies going by my face or gnats or something like that. So I was always waving in front of my face, seeing if I could catch them. And the doctor reassured me, no, that's just an optical illusion. That will go away. And then she went on to say how she's having actual bugs, gnats, flying around the outside of her house. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what color is your light bulb outside the house? Mm-hmm. And she said, white. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, turn it to a yellow light.
Right.
And she looked at me funny, and I said, this is what I do for a living. And she goes, I know what you do for a living. So, but we have another question about gnats.
Yeah.
Somebody
Lynn
somewhere.
in Citrus Heights. She says she has tiny gnats coming in her windows. Oh, you're going to play. Go for it.
Hi, Farmer Fred. My name is Lynn, and I live in Citrus Heights. I'm having problems with these little teeny tiny gnats. They do not go for food. They seem to only go for water, but they also go into my cupboards and just die on the bottom of my cupboards. It seems like I've seen them come in the windows. So possibly they're living in the dirt below. I'm not sure. I live in an apartment, but I am hoping for a solution to these creepy crawlies. They do go and die around light bulbs and both light bulbs and water. Any ideas? Thanks much. Bye.
Well, good luck to all of us.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
3 things came to mind for me. One is fungus gnats, which lay their eggs, and then their larvae also spend time in organic matter. The times I've seen them, it's been in a container plant, in the organic matter that container plant is growing in. The next one is fruit flies. Fruit flies hang out around fermenting fruit. So she didn't mention anything about fermenting fruit outside her window. And the third one is called a drain fly or a moth fly. I'm leaning towards that one. I have seen them in greenhouses. Drain flies or moth flies develop in standing water, and we've had a very wet year here in this part of California, and that's where Lynn is. And I don't know what's outside her window, but if there's a wet spot with some organic slime, maybe it's where the downspout on her apartment building dumps the water. We've had water up until very recently. We've continued to have rain. Some wet place that keeps getting wet like that, they would live right there. And they do come in through windows, and they are attracted to light, and they need their water, and when they're stuck in the house, they don't get it, so they die.
So I imagine the cure for all of this would be to clean these swampy areas.
Right. It's suggested by a Kentucky entomology site that if you think you're trying to identify where they're coming from in the house, they do occur in houses where there's standing water, let's say in a sink, in that it's called a P-trap, where water settles, and if you don't use that sink for a long time, they could live in there. But you take a plastic cup, and line the inside with something sticky like Vaseline, petroleum jelly, or Tanglefoot sticky trap stuff, and put it over the location where you think they are breeding, and they'll get stuck inside the cup. This isn't going to work to control them. It's just going to help you find out where they're coming from.
I would hate to remove a P-trap under a sink on my back, crawling under the sink, and opening up the P-trap. All of a sudden, there's flying insects everywhere.
Right. In the sink, it's pretty easy to get rid of them. You just, boiling water itself could do it. And so if this place of breeding is right outside of Lynn's window, she could potentially go out there and pour boiling water over it, hoping to get the whole thing. And that would kill the larvae and the eggs if they're near the surface. She could ask the powers that be to improve the drainage there. I don't know if putting a lot of bark mulch on top of that site might help. It would absorb some of the water, and it would bury the flies, and I suspect they'd have a harder time getting out.
Maybe if you spot that slow drain outdoors, you could throw some chlorine bleach on it.
I don't know if bleach would kill them. Bleach does kill a lot of things, and bleach can be very harmful to our skin and our clothing. So that would be something to be very careful about trying.
Okay. The good news in all of this is the fact this is a seasonal thing.
Yes, it's going to go away.
Yeah. So if you just be patient, move in with your sister or something else.
Take a vacation.
Come back. They'll probably be gone.
Right. So the two, I don't think it's the rotting fruits. I don't think it's the fruit flies. Fruit flies have little reddish bodies. The fungus gnat of the three has the longer, thinner body and longer, thinner wings. And the drain fly is like the shape of a moth, but it's much, 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 much smaller. And it is hairy like a moth. And it's sort of a brown. It can have some black in it. It's of the three, it's lighter in color. It's got the chubbiest wings of all. But you'd have to see pictures of them to know the comparison.
I, too, would take a quick look around your openings, like your screens or your windows, to see if there's any cracks.
Right.
And repair those, too. And then going back to the outdoor lights as well, I think sodium vapor lights or yellow lights would also dissuade them from coming closer to the house.
Mm-hmm. Sodium vapor lights work as well.
According to the University of California's integrated pest management site, it's important to consider the role of light attraction to these flies. They are often attracted to structures during the evening hours by external building lights. Lights should be placed away from doors or other building openings to reduce fly access to the interior of the building. And lights near the structure should use sodium vapor lamps or insect lights, which are less attractive to moth flies. I would add to that, under no circumstances do you want to put one of those ultraviolet insect killer lights next to your door.
That just brings insects from afar. Oh, look, let's go there.
Yeah.
Call up the family and bring them along.
All right. So the good news is this issue will go away, and you can soon worry about something else.
Yes.
All right. Debbie Flower, we helped somebody out here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, Fred.
you have a small yard and you think you don't have the room for fruit trees? Well, maybe you better think again, because Dave Wilson Nursery wants to show you how to grow great tasting fruits like peaches, apples, pluots, and nut trees. Plus, they have potted fruits such as blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, boysenberries, figs, grapes, hops, kiwi, olives, and pomegranates. These are all plants that you can grow in small areas. You can even grow many of them in containers on patios as well. It's called backyard orchard culture, and you can get step-by-step information via the Dave Wilson YouTube videos. So where do you find those? Well, just go to davewilson.com, click on the Home Garden tab at the top of the page. Also in that Home Garden tab, you're going to find a link to their fruit and nut harvest chart. You can be picking delicious, healthy fruits from your own yard from May to December here in USDA Zone 9. And something else you're going to find in that Home Garden tab. You're going to find the closest nursery to you that carries Dave Wilson's quality fruit trees, and they're in nurseries from coast to coast. So start the backyard orchard of your dreams at davewilson.com. In the current Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast, we tell you the best ways to choose and care for your garden hand tools. We talk with a rather sharp master gardener about keeping those cutting blades in top shape, and of trying to decipher the basics on how to sharpen garden hand tools can maybe be a bit daunting to understand in an audio format. Well, the newsletter also has a video about garden tool sharpening. And the wise gardener can help ensure that their garden tools can last a lifetime by first purchasing well-made tools. We talk with a couple of tool heads who say instead of purchasing several inexpensive tools, pick the one garden tool that you will use the most and then buy the highest quality one that you can find. So, what makes for a quality garden hand tool? It's all in the current Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and mini podcast, Selecting and Caring for Garden Hand Tools. If you're already a Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter subscriber, it's probably in your email right now. Or you can start a subscription. It's free. Find the link to the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast in today's show notes or at Substack. Or you can sign up at the newsletter link at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. Let's go to the garden email bag here on the Garden Basics podcast. Our chief question answerer is here, America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower. We get a question from Julie in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who says, I would love a podcast episode on mums, chrysanthemums, related to flowers that no bug wants to visit. She says, I have some Belgium mums for the late fall color, but I wondered if they are good for any pollinators or any bug. So she did an internet search and she found that a lot of bugs like them. And she says she found no bugs like them because, after all, mums make bug poison. So what is the truth? Yeah, that is a conundrum.
A little confusing, yeah.
That's the internet for you.
It is.
Stick around long enough, you'll hear every angle.
Yep.
All right. Well, now there's a germ of truth to both.
There is.
Yeah.
There is an insecticide made from chrysanthemums called pyrethrin. It has several chemicals in it that come from the plant. But it is made only from a particular chrysanthemum that is a white daisy type flower, which most of us don't grow, and it's certainly not one of the Belgium mums. I had to look up the Belgium mums, and they're a recent development in the chrysanthemum world. They make a very tidy mound of flowers, and they are not brittle. The stems of many chrysanthemums are brittle, and these are not, and they just have hundreds and hundreds of blooms on this nice tiny mound. So that is not the chrysanthemum that makes the insecticide. So her chrysanthemums will not kill bugs. So she also asked if there are flowering plants that don't attract bees or wasps. And that stumped me. I couldn't even think of a good way to research it. What would your terms be? So every time I looked it up, I would get lists of pollinator plants because I talked about plants and bees and wasps. And there are many, many, many lists for that. But the only place I could find a list of plants that do not attract lots of insects, and it wasn't specific to bees and wasps, was from some publications by University of Georgia, which has a good horticulture program there. The first one I came across said had a list of plants and then said, we need to do more research. I did not find the research paper, but I found a later publication that basically listed the same plants. And so it's called Newswire. It's a list of plants that are the wrong stuff, as they put it, for bees. This includes cultivars of dianthus. Dianthus are commonly called pinks. They did not list the cultivars. Geraniums, chrysanthemums. So they're saying they don't attract bees. Marigolds, straw flowers, daffodils, coreopsis, daylilies, flowering vinca, tulips, crocus, and many roses and dwarf zinnias. So that only covers bees. It doesn't cover wasps, and it doesn't cover other bugs.
So what is the wrong stuff? What is the ingredient or the color or the aroma that is causing bees to say no to that?
Bees are attracted to certain colors, bright colors, especially blue and yellow, and they typically don't see red. And I Googled around because a lot of this is about honeybees, and I also checked into trying to find out if native bees had the same color preference. And it was very little information out there, but the little bit I could find indicated that yes, native bees also seem to not be attracted to red.
Unless that red color has some sort of ultraviolet margin to it.
Right. Many insects can see beyond the human visual spectrum, which is certain wavelengths, and they can see into the ultraviolet. And many flowers have patterns on the petals that can only be seen by those who can see ultraviolet markings, and it points the insect into the location of the reward. And the reward for a bee is pollen and nectar. Those are the two things that the bees are after. So a flower that has a lot of pollen and nectar and is maybe red but has the ultraviolet on it will attract a bee.
That thing about bees not being attracted to red, that's been around for quite a while. And at the time, when I first read that back in the 1990s, I had a row of callistemon and bottle brush with the red bottle brush-like flowers covered in honeybees. I go, what the hell is this all about?
Right.
Come on, I'm looking at them here.
So there's got to be some ultraviolet markings that we can't see.
Yeah.
And if you Google it, there are places that will show you what the flower looks like to us and then what it looks like to something that can see ultraviolet.
How would they know that?
Good question.
Yes.
Because they do say they simulate it.
Oh, yeah, they'd have to, unless they planted some sort of camera behind a bee's eye or something.
Or have some sort of special, I don't know enough about photography, some sort of special filter.
Yeah, well, it's possible.
As for wasps, the stinging wasps, which I think are the ones her friend needs to stay away from, are the big ones. And they are actually very beneficial in the garden. There are many little tiny ones that are also beneficial, but they don't sting humans. So the stinging wasps are looking to plants for nectar and hoping also to find a source of protein, which would be an insect, a spider, a caterpillar, aphids, something like that they will eat off of the plant that provides the nectar, or they'll just eat the insect. They, too, can see the ultraviolet, but they tend to visit flowers that are white and yellow. Oh, they're attracted to certain scents. So some maybe not white and yellow flowers that produce a very sweet scent may be attractive to wasps. I don't know about you, but I have seen people get bitten by yellow jackets that were eating sugar off of like a soda can. My mom picked up a can and
swallowed one.
Right, got bitten.
Yeah.
So they're into the sugar, but they eat caterpillars. I watched one once. I was on a hike and it was a plant eating caterpillar, and they knocked it to the ground, cut it in pieces while I was watching, flew away with a piece, came back, got another piece, flew away with it, got another piece, flew away with it, taking it to the nest, I assume, feeding its offspring. The stinging ones also tend to make nests we humans can see. They make them out of mud, or they make them out of wood products, or they live in the ground. So you can find them by watching their flying patterns. What are they flying in and out of? And avoid them that way. And then there was lots of advice about how to be in the garden and not get stung, which is things like wearing not bright colors. I don't know if you've ever been in the garden in a red t-shirt and been bombarded by hummingbirds. Or a red baseball cap. That's happened to me.
Really?
Yeah. Don't wear perfume or cologne or, hair products that smell. Stay away from fallen fruit, trash cans, because that's where bees and wasps will go in and get some of their sugar. And if you get around a bee or a wasp, move very slowly. I took a beekeeping class once. It was a very short, sort of an intro thing. And we got to the point where we could pick up the bees with our hands and pet them and write on their backs with nail polish because they can be very docile if you are very docile.
Yeah, that's a very good point. We were in our former home back on the acreage, we had a swimming pool. Mm-hmm. So I'd lollygag in the swimming pool on a raft. And actually you have water on your arms and the bees would land on my arm.
To get that little bit of water.
Get that little bit of water, yeah. I just watched him, see what he would do. Be patient. Don't panic. Just watch the bee. He took a drink of water and left.
Right.
That's all you have to do.
Right.
Yeah, fine. Go back and pollinate something.
Right. Yes, we want them in our gardens, and it's very difficult to have a garden without them visiting.
I'm glad they visit.
I am, too.
Now, yellow jackets, too, you mentioned they live underground, and it's usually underground beneath your collection of old pots that you have behind the garage or whatever.
Or under the potting table.
Yeah, and, you get that urge once a year to clean up things and you start moving things, and then all of a sudden, you're the target.
Yes.
And I have read where if you're going to run a zigzag pattern and don't bother jumping in the pool because they'll just wait for you.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I got bitten 6 times one day at school because they had made a nest under the potting table and we went out. It was probably early in the season. Mm-hmm. Nobody had been out there yet. We went out to do a lab and out they came.
Yeah. Now, paper wasps get a bad rap. They're a cousin to the yellow jacket. And the paper wasps are the slower moving ones. I always call the yellow jackets, they look like bees on caffeine. And the paper wasp are lazy. Their legs hang down and they fly very slowly.
The DC-9 full of fire retardant trying to take off from the airport.
Yeah. And they'll only get mad if you disturb their nest, which is usually under the eaves of your roof or in a piece of old pipe. And when they make their nest in the eaves, it looks like an upside down egg carton. Mm-hmm. If you're going to get rid of it, do it when they're sleeping.
Yes, at night. My grandfather taught me that. Hang a towel over them and do it at night because they're home.
Yeah. And when the temperatures drop, they slow down.
Right. And most of them die except for the queen. And she finds a place. She's already impregnated. She finds a quiet place to spend the winter. And then she comes out and makes another family of workers who make another nest.
And that is another good tip, too. If you're hanging those yellow cylinders to attract the yellow jackets, especially, put them out early, earlier than you think, probably in March, because like you say, the queen is out first.
Right.
And you can capture 1,000 workers and not accomplish much.
Right. She just makes more babies.
Yeah. So if you can get the queen early in the season, you're halfway home.
Yes. Yes. But they are good for the garden. So if they're not in your way, leave them be.
We had an outbreak of yellow jackets in the area where we used to live, to the point where the local mosquito and vector district came out in force. And they basically marched side by side, 20 people astride.
Wow.
In white suits, marching across a field and into a eucalyptus grove, looking
for those
nests. And they pointed out to me something very interesting is you can spot them early in the morning, usually not that early, about 8 or 9 in the morning when they start waking up, because they will send scouts out first and you will see the yellow jackets vertically rise one at a time. They'll just go up like 6 or 10 feet and then back down.
You have to warm up or something?
Well, they're the scouts. They're going out seeing what the temperature is.
Okay.
Then they go back and report.
Okay.
And if the air is warm enough, out they come.
Uh-huh.
So when you start seeing that around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning of basically vertical, low-flying yellow jackets, you can get a pretty good idea of where the nest is.
Yeah.
And that can help you out a lot if you're going to be mowing, especially.
Yes. Yeah. So be aware. Pay attention.
Which has nothing to do with mums, but there you go.
Right. I think she's fine with her Belgian mums.
All right. Anything else on this?
Well, just that flowers that have lots of petals are very full. I have a bourbon rose that's that way. are less likely to attract bees and moths because they need a place to land. Bees and wasps, because they need a place to land, and then they need to be able to get to the sex parts.
They love the daisy-like flowers.
They love which the pyrethrum one is a daisy-like flower. So these Belgian mums have, from the pictures I saw, I have not seen one in real life, but I appear to have lots of flowers. So those bunched flowers with lots and lots and lots of petals. We call them doubles, but they have way more than double the number of petals, are good choices if you do not want bees and wasps visiting.
And kids, never go into the garden in bare feet.
Right.
Yes.
A good way to step on one.
Yeah, you'll never forget that. Yellow jackets tend to change their diet, too, as the season progresses. They're going out looking for sugar early in the season, in the early part of the summer. By late summer, say at your Labor Day picnic, they want that salmon that's on the grill or that steak. All of a sudden, they become meat eaters. So if you are baiting a trap, those yellow cylinder traps, if you're not using the scented prepackaged baits, if you're just loading it with your own bait, one of the pieces of advice I got from the local mosquito and vector district was to take some old lunch meat and cut it up in little pieces like ham or turkey ham or something like that and put it in there, and that will attract them late in the season.
I can remember making a trap which had something to do with hanging meat over water in a can or something like that.
Yeah, that's very common, where you have a bucket and a string going across the top of the bucket, and you hang something to hold the bait, and right in the middle, basically. But the water level is low. But once they get the meat, they're too heavy. They can't fly up. They have to fly across. And they can't do it because that bait is within the parameters of the bucket, even though there's might be 3 inches of water at the bottom. And so they will drop down. When they drop down, they hit the water. They're not getting out.
They can't fly, yeah. Maybe put a little oil in the water or something.
There are directions online about how to build traps like that.
Yes.
I will see if I can find the one that I'm very fond of looking at. All right. I think we got mums, yellow jackets, and paper wasps all taken care of here.
And bees.
All right. Where you go. Those are the facts of life. Thanks for writing in, Julie. Welcome to summer, where we all look a little ragged in the hot afternoon. And in your garden, especially those plants that are new, they may be looking a little droopy too. But before you add water, give another listen to what America's favorite retired college horticultural professor, Debbie Flower, has to say. She's got some tips to help any newly installed plants beat the heat. And on a hot day, who doesn't like to stand under a mister? It makes us feel better. But what about your houseplants? We talk with an indoor garden expert who says it'll probably do you more good than your houseplants. It's this week's flashback episode, number 209. It's entitled Droopy Plants, What to Do Before You Add Water. It's from July of last year. Find a link to it in today's show notes, or at the podcast player of your choice, or at our homepage, gardenbasics.net. The Garden Basics with Farmer Fred podcast comes out once a week on Fridays. Plus, the newsletter podcast that comes with the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter continues, and that will also be released on Fridays. Both are free, and they're brought to you by Smart Pots and Dave Wilson Nursery. The Garden Basics podcast is available wherever podcasts are handed out, and that includes our homepage, gardenbasics.net. And that's where you can also sign up for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter and podcast. That's gardenbasics.net, or you can use the links in today's show notes. And thank you so much for listening.